think your microphone is on. So.
Okay, my name is Varsha Dhodia of 59 Kenton Park Avenue, Harrow, Middlesex. I'm currently a member of Harrow Patient Participation Network. This is a group of people. Every GP surgery should have a patient participation group. The chairs of the GP surgeries in Harrow, we've come together to support each other, to learn from each other, and that's why we've formed this network. I can also say that I have been involved in shaping a healthier future for the last 3 years in different capacities, so I have fairly detailed knowledge of how this program was set up and has been executed.
Yeah, so does that work? I think we should switch yours off, Vash. Oh, that's it. Is that working? Does that work? Oh, no. Yeah, my name is Robert Sale. I live in Chandos Road in Harrow. I'm the Vice Chair of my local patient participation group at Pete's Medical Centre, and also a committee member of the Harrow Patient Participation Network.
Can we just look at some of the borough-specific issues first? You set out that the CCG in your area is in deficit to the tune of £10 million. That's and that's I think on page 1613 for the Commissioner's benefit, and it's the second paragraph headed up setting the scene, the financial position in Harrow. The CCG says it can prepare a balanced budget for the coming year, but to balance it, it will need help from the other CCGs. Can you explain a little bit more about that and what you think the likely reality is?
Certainly I can. And I think this is one of the things that underlies a lot of what we say. I mean, just in context, we did this because we realised, and our members realised, the resource pressures on our surgeries are one of the biggest things that they face in trying, against considerable odds, to continue providing us a service in our surgeries. And we decided from our PPG and took that up to the group that the resource issue would be the thing that we could best try and flag up from the patient perspective to assist them in providing services. And the situation in Harrow, and I'm sure it's the same elsewhere, but we'll talk specifically about that. We're not saying that Harrow is worse than anywhere, except there's this fear that telling the truth is going to cause more of a problem. The situation in Harrow is that in February of this year, it looked as though the commissioners were about to come in, because Harrow could not set, and was struggling to set, a legal budget. The main issue was there's an £18 million debt brought over from the old PCT. They have an operating annual budget deficit of 10 million. And the core thing of our evidence was that this formula that's used to allocate monies both to primary care and to the CCGs and to the public health function is radically unfair to Harrow as it is elsewhere, but the Harrow case, because the way the formula works does not recognise the kind of place that Harrow is now. And so a budget, we believe, has sort of been cobbled together for the next 6 months, but with that underlying problem it won't go away. We also know that because of the precariousness of the situation in Harrow, the request of the collaboration of the 8 CCGs to have fully devolved commissioning was turned down because of the precarious nature of the funding situation in Harrow. Now, we have very severe concerns about the whole commissioning, co-commissioning and GP networks and conflicts of interest that came up in the previous evidence. But the situation there is very dire. We're not blaming the CCG people or saying they're not. I believe they want to do the best for the patients. The system is irretrievably broken. And if we go on pretending that it can be fixed, we're doing everybody a huge disservice.
Can I just be clear about this? What you're saying, if I've got this right, is that the deficit is such that if they aren't, if I can use the common phrase, bailed out by the other CCGs, they're in serious trouble. Is that
that's correct, as I understand it, yes.
Okay.
So if we look at Harrow's submission, Harrow CCG submission, I won't take you to it, but for reference, it's volume 2, page 553. What is suggested there is it says that the CCG, they're embarking on an exciting programme as part of the out-of-hospital strategy. Are you saying they can't afford it?
Okay. What Rob has just explained, historically we have a structural deficit. Now, in the 14-15, there were some monies, about to a tune of 25 million, that came into the borough CCG from the collaboration. We got NHS England talk about distance from a target. This is the way the funding formula works. Harrow is second from the bottom, so we were nearly 9% lower than our target. With some extra money that Jeremy Hunt declared in December, we've given another 4%. So for the financial year 15-16, we have some extra monies, but nowhere to plug the gap. Now, Harrow's population has also changed in the time the formula has been in existence. So what has been happening is that the need in Harrow is far greater. We have the largest proportion of older people over 85. And this population requires larger amount of health care. So structurally, both the population need and the funding actually exacerbates our situation. And for the out-of-hospital strategy, we have to deliver, but we cannot deliver in a big leap. We have to take small steps. So at the moment, the out-of-hospital strategy, we talk about whole systems change. We are looking at a virtual ward, because in some way, if we can keep people at their own place of residence and provide care in their own homes for those population who can safely have that care, we are looking at that, because we really need to find savings. And the QUIP program, which is in a way finding more productivity, that's an NHS word for it, is really large, very difficult to really deliver.
So are you saying that the financial position impacts negatively on the ability of Harrow to deliver SAF program?
SAF is about making a change. So when you're making a change, you're going to keep the old system running. You need to make the changes until the new is in place. So yes, we haven't had all our sections of the out-of-hospital strategy in place. So if you look at Harrow as a borough, there is a talk about walk-in centres. So one half of the borough, in the north and the south, we have walk-in centres. East Harrow has no walk-in centre. And last 2 years, the CCG has been trying to get a service up and running to have a hub in East Harrow. We have not been very successful.
I was going to ask you about that.
Can I come on to say something?
Explain why it is that you say in your submission you think it unlikely that they will receive viable bids for the hubs in the East and Central?
Can I say something about that?
Yes, thank you. I can say something about that, I think. I've seen the presentation from Dr. Kelsheiker in his evidence, and I've got that here, and I really was struggling to recognise the borough I live in and have our practice in when I read it. And I think this is illustrative of what I'm saying about the pretense that everything's rosy in the garden. We had a meeting with our local medical committee, and one of the key issues that we brought up when we have meetings with our CCG is concerns about the fact that there is no out-of-hospital hub in the east of the borough or in the centre of the borough where the more deprived parts of the borough exist. And we find out that there is no chance of the hub being built in the foreseeable future. Part of the reason, and very much to do with the funding that is available and the way that the funding from government keeps changing from minute to minute. And the chair of the local medical committee said there was no chance of that happening in the foreseeable future. I believe that they have had one bid come in from local surgeries, and it's not viable. And there are all sorts of other issues to do with land values and all the rest of it that are putting the kibosh on this. But I think that what needs to happen is that people need to speak out as to what's actually going on. And until that happens, I mean, as far as we're concerned, there was a consultation that was held way back last year. And it happened at a very drop of a hat. And at that time, people went away from that meeting thinking they were going to have an out-of-hospital hub service like there is at Alexandra Clinic or the PIN or somewhere like that. And of course, that is absolutely not going to be the case in the foreseeable future. And yet nobody will tell the public and be honest about it. And I think that is the biggest criticism that I have. Not they're not trying to do their best in impossible circumstances, but it ain't going to happen. Be open, upfront and honest about it and tell people.
Can I just ask you whether you refer to a consultation? Is that the take-part consultation?
No, it's not. It was a specific consultation that was held in the Belmont area in Wealdstone, May last year, was it, Varsha? I can't remember. Where they realised, I mean, they got it together so fast, they didn't actually get it put in the local press. So not that many people turned up, but nevertheless, there was some discussion about it. And they said that they'd done the business case and they put the, whatever you call these, I don't know, business case 1 and business case 2, and they got this contractor in and PA consulting and Jimmy whatever and all the rest of it. But it was going to happen. And then silence. And it wasn't until we went to meet with the local medical committee chair earlier on this year, and they said, sorry, I don't think you're fully appraised of the facts. Another issue, 8 to 8 opening. A lot of our patients think, because of Mr. Cameron, our surgeries are going to be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they ask, when's it going to happen? And the local medical committee chair says, no, I think you're wrong there. You're lucky, quote, if you're going to get a few extra phone calls out of it.
Can I just ask you very briefly then, you refer to something called the take-part consultation. I think it's in relation to the relationship between local authority and CCG. Can you flesh that out a little bit and tell us what
yeah, just on that, and I'll let you go then, Varsha. Yes. I think the take-part consultation, on top of the perilous financial situation that we've got in the CCG, equally, the local authority was forced, for ideological reasons obviously, to make what's currently £82 million worth of cuts in the local government services. What we found was there was very, very little, there's all very serious concerns about that consultation as well, which hopefully may be resolved elsewhere, but the fact of the matter is that there was very little communication between the CCG and the council in looking at how they could manage both of these financial crises. And the reason that we did what we did here with this evidence was not because we thought we were going to take them to court. We thought, okay, you've been saying it's unfair, you've been saying it's outrageous for the last 10 years, come up to the mark, get together, we're only patients from our group, get your finance departments, get your lawyers, look at it, and do it properly. And they wouldn't do it, and that's why we thought, all right, we'll put it to Lee Day and see what comes of it. And that's where this arose. Because we were trying to say, okay, if you want to fight for your community, like the people were saying about Ealing, If you want to fight for your community, you're honest about it, this is the way you do it. You don't just write to the paper and start a petition when there's an election.
The Take Part consultation was part of the local authority, but we know that the health and social care economy is intertwined. Now, if there is reduction in adult social care, then the eligibility criteria is pretty raised. And as I said, we have a large older population in our borough. Some of the people who may have social care needs but end up in the health place of care because their care needs are not met. Things like falls, not having enough nutrition, etc. So in some way, one marker that I would say is that our commissioned service from London Northwest Hospitals is always overspent, because a lot of the need, they've commissioned a service, but actually we're taking more of it. And in a way to reduce admissions to hospitals, which is one part of the Better Care Fund, admissions to nursing homes and residential homes. So a lot of these services need to be brought into people's homes, but you need to have a place where you could maneuver, you could channel some of the funding. And at the moment we are really constrained in both the health and social care.
So was the Take Part consultation addressing those issues of communication between the local authority and the health service?
Well, no, I think you can see from the evidence that we provide. I mean, there were two things that come to mind. First of all, there was, I think, the final commissioning intentions report that was produced by the CCG was sent over to the council the day before the Overview and Scrutiny Committee was due to meet. Huge document. And so the head of policy at Harrow Council put a very strongly worded letter back to the CCG saying hardly consultation. The CCG response to the Take Part consultation was submitted on the 7th of November last year, I believe, and it was due also on the 4th of November, and I think the consultation was due to finish on the 7th. And previously they'd identified about 13, I think it was, areas where they felt they hadn't been given sufficient information. So, despite all this talk about local collaboration and joined up thinking and not working in silos and all that blah blah, it was quite obvious they hadn't been talking to each other. And at the meeting that I was at, where they were discussing the impact of the cuts, they were sort of suggesting to the council, the CCG suggested to the council, they were trying to blame the CCG for the shortfalls in funding. And that, I mean, you know, what we were trying to do was to get them to work together for the people of the borough. And clearly, in our estimation, that wasn't happening.
Just one thing I would add is that if you look at if you're in a very constrained health and social care economy, it's the voluntary sector that actually supports people, because people do need support. And within our Take Part and eventual, that we've had a massive cut in the voluntary sector funding. So in some way, CCG are saying that people who are isolated, people who need support with some of the benefits, they would go to the voluntary sector, but the voluntary sector funding is cut. So you can see that in a very constrained economy, the left, what is suggesting is the right cannot deliver.
Thank you. I have no further questions. If you wait there may be some questions from the commissioners.
No, I think that would be evidence.
No, thank you.
The fact we've asked no questions, that means that the evidence wasn't very clear.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.